Chile here with Sirius Dallas Moon Mars Hour. Mars 2020 in Aquarius here in the 10th house, 0 degree Taurus ascendant with Venus, 13 degrees Pisces. Moon is applying to Chiron and Aries. And midheaven is ruled by Saturn that conjoined Neptune in 0 degree Aries. I beg the question, will China declare the minerals coming from the Arctic as conflict minerals? Again, we have a preliminary case where Congo minerals were declared conflict minerals. Now, blood minerals or conflict minerals are basically minerals that are mined from zones where there are civil wars, genocides, and human rights violations. Since Trump has manifested his 10% tariff on import to United States, which is export from the other conglomerates' perspective, and the competition on the Arctic has been so grand. The question is whether a wu-wei approach to that topic is declaring Arctic minerals as conflict minerals, particularly with the initiative in Greenland, and by that, and then what would be the implications? Because China is pretty much a monopoly over rare earth minerals. And the question is, would China take such act? Would China consider that as stepping over the top in terms of taking so much power that it would create further implications from the other, whether it's Russia, whether it's USA, Europe? And here we have a very fascinating disposition of a possible world monopoly on rare earth minerals, which is China, that owns both the refinery and the minerals themselves, having such vast land, juxtaposed to the prospective opportunity of treating the conflict around the Arctic with what could be definitely be perceived as a fair and authentic resolve that those minerals are conflict zone minerals, at least as per Greenland. Would that be affecting the economy of Norwegian and neighboring countries? Is a big question, but I think we should definitely be prepared for both scenarios, as what if it's one of the most economic things to do. Okay, it's zero. Okay, basically, how would one enter a battlefield without a single soldier in and have an absolute point of interference, and that's declaring those minerals conflict zone or blood minerals. Now, it would beg the question regarding to the ethics in mineral mining in China, mining and refinery in China, which could prompt a Security Council decision. Now you say, but how come? Well, if there are soldiers, boots on ground in Russia, supported by the allied nation, Russia was a P5, so is China. Okay, for those who did not get that, Last sentence, it's not your fault. Basically, the Security Council has the P5, that is the vetoing nations that are the winners of the Second World War, namely France, UK, United States, Russia, and China. And this is those were the winners of the Second World War. Those are the countries that can veto a decision of the Security Council, and Security Council has the veto. Now here's the thing: there is a lot of shmoom going on from everyone. Okay, whether it's Donald Trump calling for an alternative to the UN and so on and so forth, but the basis principle of several countries that can decide to invade China militarily still exists, and on the basis of unethical mining in China, if there is unethical mining in China, they could basically implement such a move. And so we have a couple of these positions that is very, very interesting when it comes to what could be the possible responses to the raising of the tariffs. And I think the fairest is to declare Arctic minerals with its disposition in Greenland as conflict minerals. It was on the menu, okay? Kind of like I did not invent that, it was on the menu. Yeah, and I was not the only one thinking about that. And because we can't imagine a world in which 10% tariffs on one of the biggest consumerism empire in the world just runs smoothly without China wanting to see, namely the greatest manufacturer, wanting to see dividends from those 10%. Now, this prompts something that I already discussed in the past, and this is the blue ocean of ethically mining and refining rare earth minerals. Now, let's face the reality, okay? The wars are, well, if I say it by extortion, cold logic, ritual abuse is done as wealth consolidation of rare earth minerals, natural resources, and the real estate that they are linked to. Okay? So wars, and it's done to extort people to loot so and so for that conglomerate or for that conglomerate. And this is where, how does a drug dealer go to jail? It was in the wrong party. To rape children, fantastic. They need him to do that, particularly in front of cameras. Otherwise, they can't trust him. As long as he doesn't make a decision. When he makes a decision, is not aligned with what, and when there are changes of the Centaurians die, and then people like have minds and thoughts and opinions, and that's very unusual. So that could put extortion calls at very risky time for annihilation. Now, since wars happen to loot those resources, could we envision now? By the way, the greatest move countering that is to declare something blood minerals or blood resources. The only reason it's not done is because the technologies that are used to create pedophiles are classified. Now, to be representatives, politicians need to be trusted by the public more than they are trusted by the extortion cults. But the process of manufacturing a non-pedo one is something we have yet found the patent to. And now here is the thing. There is this thing called democracy. So it basically creates, okay, it basically creates the possibility to include representative politicians as long as they do not negate the general vote that goes in favor of the extortion courts. And navigating that, I'm sure some politicians would. It's juggling the Now again, I was so tender with my interpretation. I was given so much credit that the national debt of United States 7 times can compound. Now, what happens if just as a power move, all of these big wars are going to be declared blood minerals in the aftermath? How do you loot an Epstein island? You you publish a list. How do you loot, let's say Venezuela after Trump? You 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 see, were there violations of somebody sexually harassed somebody in the mine? Fantastic, conflict minerals. Now, what that creates, would people not go to war over that? Yeah, of course they will, but they would be fighting using weapon that was prepared by blood minerals, and that they would need to fire. They would need to actually use the weapon, which means that the weapon production companies would need to have, if you're a weapon production company and you're producing from blood minerals, you're basically a company that commits active crimes against humanity, and say, oh, well, that can only be justified to prevent genocide. Well, then you should use the first weapon to prevent the mining from the mining that from the mine that or the mines that the minerals for those weapons were produced. You say, that way I don't make any money. That's the point. That's the point of blood minerals declaration, is that they would not go to further instigate more looting that eventually extinguishes the earth and its residents. Um, Not me, it's a natural function. Now, for a weapon company to be taken such a risk would only be if it would be extorted to. That's not a problem. That is already. Um, but then it would be very difficult not to expose, because let's say company does that. Okay, what would the competing weapon company do? Epstein list. Any weapon trade company is in the Epstein list. I haven't looked into that. Let's see. Let's do a study live with me. Weapon trade company founders in Epstein files. According to this, it's possible to invade China. Um, Mind you, like Anne Boleyn, I only have one head. I'm not going to open this link. Links to Iran and North Korean spies. Okay. I was just looking for weapon trade founders. Who is named in all these files? There isn't anybody that didn't know anybody. Weapon trade, anybody? Okay, let's do a little bit of name listing. Okay. Let's pick a letter. Let's go from the end. Hi. South Africa anti-apartheid activist. Um, W. Senegalese politician. One of the most important players in Africa. I guess that has a double meaning. Michael Waltrip. Racing team owner. Stock car racer. Casey Wasserman. Executive, entertainment executive and sport agent. Molecular biologist, genetist, and zoologist. That may be the reason we had homeless biologists around COVID. Weinstein, film producer and sex offender. They can't have one without the other. Let's fix. American billionaire and businessman. Nathan Wolf. Stanford. Virology at Stanford. Okay. Michael Wolff, consultant and journalist. Um, yeah, why not? Let's continue. Brian Wickers, professional stock car racer. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's the only V here. T, fashion brand. David Schoen, attorney. The Devilane Head, and so on. Former policy consultant and co-chief executive of Kissinger Associates. Henry Kissinger. And Ramo invited to breakfast at Townhouse in September 2013 with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. At the time, Ramos served as the boards of Starbucks and FedEx. Lisa Randall, American theoretical physicist, Harvard. Yup, that explains the state of the art. Brett Ratner, American film director and producer. Jean-Luc Brunel. Larsen, former Norwegian diplomat, politician, and sociologist. He was besties with Epstein, a thoroughly good human being. Yes, I think he was given TMI, but David A. Ross, art museum curator. That's the state of the art. Miss Rothschild, French banker, CEO and of Edmond de Rothschild Group. Yep. The bank stated the Rothschild had no knowledge of any legal proceeding against Epstein, which would beg the question regarding the ability of the bank to appraise the risk management and loss of wealth leaking to extortion cult, and ability to money launder proof their banking services. Okay, if I would want to take a loan, let's say, to invest in an ethical mining right to mine minerals. Okay, if I wanted to have ownership of the right to mine minerals in a land and invest in that, okay, in an equitable style, then they'll probably run a check on me. Which they should run a check. For example, the first check that they need to run is that I'm not trying to buy the right to mine minerals in Congo. But they had no competence at reassuring that some of the greatest business people that funnel wealth through their banking services are not committing unsolicited activities. Fairbanks is not just a town in Alaska. Lane Foster, they were a child. He said that he had given Lady de Rothschild financial help in the 1990s during her divorce. Here's another guy that knows a guy from a second husband, Andrew Stein. But a spokesperson for Rothschild said the claim was 100% false. Um, so Epstein's lawyer claimed he was introduced to Epstein by Lady de Rothschild, who referred to Epstein as interesting autodidact. Peter Mandelson was introduced to Epstein at Lady de Rothschild house at Martha's Vineyard. Mark Rowan, American billionaire and businessman, Apollo Global Management CEO, correspondent with Epstein, claimed that he never did any business with Epstein. We talked Athene Montauk. Montauk is an MK Ultra timeline techniques study project. Listen to Alondra. So this would be fun. This would be by public money. This is classified projects budget. Again, allegedly. Kevin Rudd, Prime Minister of Australia from 2007, 2010, 2013. Am I gonna run into the people? Catherine Rumler, American lawyer, White House counsel under Barack Obama. Okay. The names that are missing. Andres Pastrana Arango. Okay, logs from Epstein's private jet. President of Colombia, Jan Pigosi. Jan Pigosi is French-born Italian art collector and philanthropist. Steven Pinkler, Canadian-American Harvard University professor of psychology and public intellectual. Okay, involved in American cultural wars. Let's open that in another window. And let me give you a little bit of a study case. How do these things affect and why? Manil Pinker. So let's go into what he taught. Developmental linguistics, language acquisition, my field. Children use default rules sometimes in error, but are obliged to learn irregular forms one by one. The language instinct, how the mind works and rules. The blank state. One very obsessed with linguistics psychologist was the psychologist I went to after the Me Too. And again, I was studying to be a linguist, so I didn't think too much of it back then. But language acquisition has to do with challenges in language acquisition have to do with sexual boundary violation. Not always, okay? But I'm talking about life energy violation. I'm talking in the context of extortion codes. So anomalies in speech, such as what I have, for example. The stuff of thought. Posit that language is an innate behavior shaped by natural selection and adapted to our communication needs. Now, natural selection immediately sparks then the word eugenics. Okay? The sense of style, general language-oriented style guide, the better angles of our nature, posits that violence in human societies has generally declined over time and identifies six major trends and five historical forces of this decline. Enlightenment now further argue that the human condition has generally improved over recent history because of reason, science, and humanism. Nature and importance of reason is also discussed in his book, Rationality, what it is, why it seems scarce, and why it matters. Um, Again, I know that from economic schools, particularly capitalist ones and libertarians. But the big missing is the human experiments and the evolution of technology. American Humanist Association, Cognitive Neuroscience, um, N- National Academy of the Sciences. So here is the thing: I would need a deeper inspect into what he actually thought, to make the connection, to make further connections than the eugenics that I already spotted. But what was, let's say, his paradigm serving, that it took precedence over competing paradigms. But this is just one example how extortion cults loot not just the politics but the science, both the exact sciences, physics, and the social science. John Phelan, American businessman, Secretary of the Navy. Okay, and we see here the infiltration of the Navy. There was a thing running that Epstein was supposed to invade the White Hats in the army. Um, Basically, now I don't know. The White Hats is both a concept to do with, I think, Oz programming, Wizard of Oz programming, and White Hats is those that are, it's those people here talking about the Galactic Federation and so on and so forth. And they're supposed to be channeling the white hats or the people that act in favor of humanity. Is it not a cover up? I don't know. I was offered to be of the white hats through channelers, or insinuated that it would be training to white hats. Again, I don't consent to anything. And if indeed they come to do good, then there would be no problem. There would be no need to for them to define me as one thing or another. And if they don't, then there is no reason for me to have that naming on me that I don't know what it means or what it entails. So, and then there is white hats, which is associated with infiltration of the army, of the U.S. Army, um, basically to create extortion. One of the things, and shout out to knitting cult lady, and she talks about the fact that if a military action is not possible to achieve, okay, then the military will declare it illegal. And even if it does not entail war crimes, if it's just impossible to win or to take that mission. Now, Epstein's role could have been interference in what would be declared illegal to begin with. So to try to prevent, and this is where Knitting Cold Lady, actually her job was to be the warning person, and she would probably run into a lot of challenge with that, because sometimes she would say, hey, that is considered illegal. We can't actually militarily achieve that. And Epstein's role would be to infiltrate and have the commanders or the higher ups do it anyway. So, again, I know I'm giving a lot of credit, um, but this is just one possible way in which such, okay, more, in which is an activity that is completely seen as not possible to attain would be receiving the okay, albeit the boarding of the best personnel, because, okay, because somebody went with somebody on Lolita Express. IDF 7th of October and IDF Israel has the right to defend itself. Better known by the UN as genocide, could be associated with such infiltration. More credit than that is literally impossible. And now I just have to add allegedly. Stacy Plaskett, U.S. Virgin Island representative, timestamps and contents of text messages. House Oversight Committee hearing which Michael Cohen testifies against Trump. Christopher Poole, American internet entrepreneur, founder of 4chan. Now 4chan is the biggest ouchie. But I think we had enough clues. Sunyi Previn, spousey of Woody Allen. She repeatedly said that the Me Too movement has gone too far. And talks about the 15-year-old victim as despicable and disgusting, and blames the victim. Extortion cult logic woman, amen. They needed these girls there. Uh, well, what I think about it? What do I think about it? What did I say about the women that said that Me Too went too far? They're in it. Penny Pritzker is a billionaire businesswoman, former United, also the man, yeah. And now they just want attention. And the former United States of Secretary of Commerce. Fair trade. Um, Thomas Pritzker. And Karina Shuliak arranged a trip to Southeast Asia to find a new girlfriend for Epstein. Hardeep Singh Puri, Indian politician, Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Met him only 3 or 4 times to be precise. the boy marriage in the secret society, when he became owner of the oil and gas companies, and when he ran to politics. Allegedly. Pusha T, American rapper, he's been handler, and that lady was drugged and being sexually abused. Yeah, there's no such thing as sex work. Um, hi, bye. Like I said, there isn't anybody that didn't know anybody. Joshua Cooper. American foreign policy, because he needs no introduction, right? That was Mr. Putin. American foreign policy consultant and co-chief executive of Kissinger Associates. Lisa Randall, Harvard. Okay, so we have this one. And try to avoid China, then you see Putin on Epstein files. Hans Ulrich Obrist, Swiss art curator, Palo Alto. They would probably was working for Putin at the same time. Because I was going to say they would probably decide which artists play the piano in front of the opening to the Arbeitmarkt Frei 2026 or something. Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, American television presenter, physician, and administrator at Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Look what a lovely, humane guy he looks. um, yep. So this is Dr. Oz. Mira Nair, Indian American filmmaker, along with Bill Clinton and Jeff Bezos, at an after party by Ghislaine Maxwell. Annabelle Nelson, British model and socialite, having emailed Epstein numerous times to put together a group of girls who were unfortunately past their sell-by date. Yeah. Alyssa New, American academic and former professor in Harvard, Poetry in America project. Indeed poetic. Boris Nikolic, Croatian doctor, biotech investor, and former advisor at the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation. He was the backup executor of Epstein's estates. Nikolic said he did not consent. Then he should call to declassify classified project budget and the classified technologies, which would prove him right if he's right. And he told him that he met Nicolas Sarkozy, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, mentioned having flirted a 22 years old woman, but after noticing she was with her husband, concluded that anything good is rented. Um, Martin Nowak, Austrian-born professor of mathematics and biology at Harvard. Um, and he was introduced to Masha Durokova to arrange an interview. He remains professor of mathematics and biology in Harvard. Okay. Peter Mandelson, Baron Mandelson, British former politician, life peer, and diplomat. According to bank statement released by the Dodge, three separate 25,000 payments referring Mandelson were sent from Epstein's J.P. Morgan account. Nadia Mirsinko, Slovak-born model and pilot. And she may be a victim of Epstein as an accomplice as well. Okay, this is not Nadia, this is Ashley Massaro. Ashley Massaro, American professional wrestler and model. She mentioned horrible things happening in the island, including dead body of a girl that had mask and was tied to a tree. Ghislaine Maxwell needs no further introduction. Robert Maxwell, Czech-born British-French media proprietor and politician. Again, this family owns every academic textbook. And every textbook. Alleging Maxwell was a spy working for Mossad and was killed because he attempted to blackmail the agency for what agency? The Mossad? For 400 million pounds, threatening to reveal his spy activity if not paid. Mm-hmm. And yeah, 400 million pounds. What can 400 million pounds buy? Yeah. No. No, seriously, what can we buy? Let's look at it. What can we buy with 400 million pounds? What can 400 million pounds, talk about British pounds, buy? That's a good way to learn math. It can fund massive high-level procurement such as long-range hypersonic weapon projects, approximately 10 to 15 Eurofighter, that's the 5%, 10 to 15 Eurofighters, Typhoon jets, or 40 plus Challenger 2 tanks. That's it. It represents a significant national scale that's all he wanted for his activity, like um, It represents a significant national scale investment in defense technology or infrastructure project. Um, about $500 million. Weapon system. As of 2026, UK Ministry of Defence is investing over £400 million in next generation hypersonic and low range missiles. Military assets, this amount can purchase roughly 10 fully equipped Eurofighters Typhoon fast jets, or about 40 Challengers, 2 main battle tanks. 40 tanks. It could potentially cover the cost of new Navy frigates. Okay, it could besiege a city. And I think I'm even being generous with that. It is enough to fund large-scale construction projects such as multiple hospitals or schools, although specific project costs vary greatly. So perhaps a couple of hospitals. If invested, could generate substantial annual income. Roughly 0.4 of the 100 billion plus pounds estimated total cost for UK's Trident nuclear deterrent program. That's a lot of housing first independently of ability to work for a limited time, which could present even more strategic intelligence advantage because all the other folks are raping their intelligence. Which would be the best investment so far. I mean, if you have an A, like, think about it, if you have an A bomb, it's a good deterrent, but like if you use an A bomb, there will be an A bomb back. If you declare all the conflict minerals and natural resources that the schizophrenic folks, the schizophrenic immigrants, and NATO and natives are, you know, revealing, then basically you won the world war. That's what's up. Like I said, zero rape, zero slavery. Um, it's a blue ocean. It's the best strategy. It is the most economic. Back to Epstein list. Met married crown princess of Norway. Oops. By the way, this is ground enough to declare Norway entire gas and oil conflict mineral. Now, because Norway mainly exports, it has actual merit to do that. Sami people, I expect a salmon if that works. It's a humble family, just me and my mom, but we expect to be well fed for the rest of our life. What's there are dividends in oil companies, and then there is food. Marvin Minsky. And by the way, it would also mean that all the trafficked people from whether First Nations or not in those areas, okay, that's the meaning of declaring something conflict minerals, is that they wouldn't be able to traffic these people and money launder that as investment in oil and gas and rare earth minerals equity rights. Okay. Marvin Minsky, American cognitive and computer scientist. Virginia Giroff stated she was directed to have sex with Minsky during a visit to Epstein's compound in the U.S. Virgin Island. Um, George J. Mitchell, American politician. By the way, if somebody wants to do Trump Venezuela, Virgin Island. Uh, George J. Mitchell, Europe wants sovereignty. I don't know. Is an American politician. She woke up and chose cows. He's an American politician, diplomat, and lawyer. Mohammed bin Salman, Prince and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, which declares Saudi Arabian oil conflict minerals. I talked in 2014-15 Arab Spring about the meaning of solar farms. And I said it from the perspective that Saudi Arabia can power itself with solar energy and the whole world can go nuggets because that would allow it to do an effective embargo without even, let's say the oil mines are looted. Now, if they take down the entire power of Saudi Arabia, then that in itself probably launches a couple of things. But there we have something different because basically Saudi Arabian oil right now is conflict. Oil is blood oil. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, former Duke of York, British royal family. Oh, that's the guy that everybody's talking about right now. Which declare British gas on conflict blood money. It's basically blood minerals, blood oil. British is Standard Oil, I know. Robert Mugabe, leader of Zimbabwe. Elon Musk. I think he's also mining minerals, or the family does. Kimball Musk, brother of Elon Musk. Nathan Myhrvold, American investor, scientist, and businessman, chief technology officer at Microsoft. Which declares Microsoft, okay, the equivalent of conflict on basically this thing is supposed to nullify Microsoft. It if you, let's say you have a business and you're working through Microsoft company, you're supposed to be replacing that. Because otherwise you're basically interfacing with a human trafficking platform, which is a crime against humanity, affiliation with money laundering, and so on and so forth. This video is not monetized. Now that I read this, this video is not monetized. Like, I cannot even ask you to send me, I don't know, rice or coffee beans, because okay, not as an exchange for this broadcast. Intellectual ventures.